I still remember the pride in my son Jamal Jr.'s eyes as he walked across that stage in his blue cap and gown. 18 years of love and sacrifice had led to this moment. What should have been our family's perfect day quickly turned into a nightmare when my parents stood up during our celebration dinner and casually announced they were reallocating his college fund to my nephew. They had no idea my wife and I had already discovered their plans. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if family drama hits close to home. Introduction to Jamal narrator. End of quote. 40 years old. African-American business owner who grew up with controlling, manipulative parents. Growing up, I learned early that love in my house came with conditions. My parents, Harold and Vivian Washington, had mastered the art of emotional manipulation before I could even spell the word. From as young as 5 years old, I noticed how my sister Angela received new clothes while I wore hand-me-downs, despite being the older child. When report cards came, my straight A's were met with indifference while her C's received celebration dinners. Our modest two-story home in suburban Detroit became the training ground for what would become a lifelong pattern. My father, a stern bank manager, would lecture me about responsibility while slipping Angela $20 just because. My mother, an elementary school teacher, somehow never found time to attend my basketball games but never missed a single one of Angela's choir performances. By 13, I had accepted my place in the family hierarchy. I threw myself into academics and sports, building a life that required minimal parental involvement. I learned to celebrate my own victories and console myself through defeats. The day I got accepted to Michigan State on a partial scholarship, my parents simply nodded and asked if Angela could have my bedroom when I left. College became my escape. I studied business management, worked 2 part-time jobs, and met Tasha during sophomore year in an economics class. She was everything my family was not: supportive, honest, and genuinely interested in my dreams. When I told her about my childhood, she squeezed my hand and said words that changed me. Their failure to see your worth does not diminish it. We married 2 years after graduation, once my small home renovation business began showing promise. When Tasha became pregnant in our 2nd year of marriage, I made a sacred promise while holding her swollen belly. Our child would never question their place in our hearts. Jamal Jr. arrived on a snowy January morning in 2005, all wide eyes and tiny fingers that gripped mine with surprising strength. The moment the nurse placed him in my arms, I understood what unconditional love felt like. Tasha and I built our family on open communication, consistent support, and the kind of genuine affection I had craved throughout my childhood. As Jamal Jr. grew, I made sure to attend every T-ball game, help with every science project, and celebrate every achievement, whether it was learning to tie his shoes or winning the regional spelling bee in 5th grade. Our home became filled with laughter, honest conversations, and the security I had always longed for. When he struggled with algebra in 9th grade, we hired a tutor and sat with him until concepts clicked. When he experienced his first heartbreak at 16, I shared my own awkward teenage stories until he laughed through his tears. My parents remained on the periphery of our lives, showing up for obligatory holiday gatherings and occasionally babysitting when absolutely necessary. They treated Jamal Jr. with the same distant politeness they showed me, while lavishing attention on Angela's son Tyler, who came along 5 years after Jamal Jr. The college fund history. The night Jamal Jr. was born, with my newborn son sleeping in the hospital bassinet beside Tasha's bed, I opened his college fund with just $500, nearly half our savings at the time. The small business I had started was barely breaking even, and Tasha was planning to take 6 months of mostly unpaid maternity leave from her job as a hospital administrator. Financially, we were stretched thin, but I remembered how I had struggled with student loans for years after college. I was determined to give my son a different start. Every month, without fail, $50 went into that account, even during the lean years of the 2008 recession, when my business nearly folded and we had to downsize to a smaller apartment. There were months when meeting that $50 commitment meant eating ramen for dinner or canceling our cable subscription, but we never missed a deposit. As my business stabilized and eventually thrived, we increased the monthly contribution to $200, then $500. When Jamal Jr. turned 10, we canceled our planned family trip to Disney World and put that $3,000 into his college fund instead. I will never forget how he responded when we told him our decision. Instead of the disappointment I expected, he nodded thoughtfully and said college is more important than Mickey Mouse. That night I cried silently in the bathroom, overwhelmed with pride at raising such a thoughtful child. By the time he entered high school, the fund had grown to just over $40,000. Not enough for a full ride at a top university, but a solid foundation. Tasha and I took on extra work. She consulted for smaller hospitals on weekends, and I expanded my business to include commercial renovations, working 60-hour weeks for 3 years straight. The physical and mental exhaustion was real, but watching the fund grow made it worthwhile. My parents occasionally contributed small amounts. $500 for Christmas one year, $1,000 for his 16th birthday, always making sure to mention their generosity repeatedly in the months that followed. "Remember that money we put in Jamal's college fund," my mother would say during Sunday dinners. "That should cover his books for at least a semester." These contributions always coincided with requests to babysit Tyler or loan money to Angela for some emergency, as Jamal Jr. began his senior year with a 3.9 gigapascal stellar SAT scores, and as captain of both the debate team and basketball team, acceptance letters arrived from several universities, including Northwestern NYU and University of Michigan. The scholarships offered covered anywhere from 20 to 50%, leaving a significant gap that the now $85,000 fund would help bridge, though we would still need some loans to cover the full cost. Each scholarship announcement became a family celebration. Tasha would make Jamal Jr.'s favorite jambalaya, and we would sit around calculating how each offer affected our financial outlook. These were some of our happiest evenings, filled with dreams about his future and pride in his accomplishments. For 18 years, our family had sacrificed for this moment, and it was finally within reach. Early warning signs of trouble with the grandparents. The first red flag appeared during Thanksgiving of Jamal Jr.'s senior year. We hosted dinner that year, and my parents arrived with Angela, her husband Kevin, and 15-year-old Tyler. While helping my mother set the table, she casually asked about the exact amount in Jamal Jr.'s college fund. "Just curious how close you are to having enough," she said, arranging silverware with precision. "College is so expensive these days." I gave her a vague answer about it being on track, but her unusual interest made me uncomfortable. Throughout dinner, I noticed her watching Jamal Jr. with an odd, calculating expression I had never seen before. December brought another concerning incident. My father called asking for the name of our financial advisor for retirement planning purposes. When I mentioned this to Tasha that night, she reminded me that my father had been retired for 3 years and had boasted about his relationship with his longtime financial planner just last month. "Something feels off," Tasha said, folding laundry with the efficiency that came from years of hospital work. They never showed this much interest in our finances before. The most alarming development was my parents' sudden, intense involvement with Tyler. My nephew had always struggled academically, more interested in video games than schoolwork, with grades hovering in the C and D range. He had been suspended twice for skipping school, and once for getting caught with cigarettes in the bathroom. Yet suddenly my parents were talking about his potential and how he just needed the right opportunity. During our traditional New Year's Day visit to my parents' house, I overheard a fragment of conversation from the kitchen while everyone else watched football in the living room. "We need to start redirecting resources where they'll make the biggest impact," my mother said in a hushed tone. "Jamal Jr. already has so many advantages. Tyler needs this break." My father's reply was too quiet to hear clearly, but I caught the phrases account access and legal right. Later that week, I casually asked my mother about what they were planning for Tyler's future. "Just typical grandparent things," she said with a dismissive wave. "Don't be so paranoid, Jamal. Not everything is about you and your son." That night I discussed my concerns with Tasha. "I think they're planning something with the college fund," I said, pacing our bedroom. Tasha sat cross-legged on our bed, her face serious. Why would they even have access to it? The question hit me like a bucket of cold water. 8 years ago, during a family emergency, when Tasha and I had been stranded during a hurricane while on a business trip to Florida, I had temporarily added my parents as account administrators so they could withdraw money for an unexpected forfeit. Medical expense for Jamal Jr. I had meant to remove them afterward, but had completely forgotten. We need to protect that money, Tasha said firmly. Tomorrow we call the bank, taking action to protect the fund. The next morning I called our financial advisor, Marcus Jensen, from my car where no one could overhear. I explained my concerns and asked about the current account permissions. Let me pull that up, Marcus said. After a moment of keyboard clicking, he continued. Yes, Harold and Vivian Washington are still listed as authorized administrators on the account added February 2015. They would have full withdrawal rights. My stomach dropped. Have there been any unusual inquiries about the account recently? His hesitation told me everything. Your father called last week asking about withdrawal procedures and tax implications. I assumed you knew. We scheduled an urgent appointment for that afternoon. Marcus's downtown office felt like a sanctuary as he outlined our options. The cleanest solution is creating an entirely new account solely in your and your wife's names, then transferring the funds, Marcus explained, sketching out a timeline on his notepad. But you should know that any authorized administrator will receive a transaction notification when you move the money. Can we disable those notifications? Tasha asked, her hospital administrator efficiency kicking in. Unfortunately, not without removing them as administrators first, which also triggers a notification, Marcus replied. However, we could create a secondary account now, then gradually move smaller amounts to avoid raising immediate alarms. How long would that take, I asked, calculating the months until graduation. To move everything safely, at least 6 months. Tasha shook her head. We might not have that long. What if we move most of it at once, but leave a small amount in the original account? Marcus nodded thoughtfully. That could work. They would still see a transaction, but might assume it's just a regular adjustment if some money remains. We spent 2 hours creating the new account with additional security measures, including verbal passwords and notification protocols that would alert us to any inquiry attempts. By the end of our meeting, we had a plan to transfer $80,000 to the new secure account, leaving $5,000 in the original as a decoy. Document everything Marcus advised as we prepared to leave. Keep copies of all original account agreements, contribution records, and these new security measures. If they challenge this legally, you'll need proof of your intentions and contributions. That evening, I found the original account paperwork in our fireproof safe, noting that while my parents were added as administrators, the account was still legally established by me for the explicit purpose of Jamal Jr.'s education. I created digital and physical copies of everything. 3 days later, the transfer was complete. The confirmation email arrived while I was finishing a kitchen renovation for a client. I stepped outside to call Tasha. It's done, I told her. 80,000 moved to the secure account. Any reaction from your parents, she asked. Nothing yet. Marcus says the notification would have gone out automatically, so they definitely know something happened. Maybe they will just ask you directly, Tasha suggested, but they never did. Instead, my mother called the following Sunday to invite us to dinner, her voice overly cheerful as she mentioned, wanting to discuss Jamal Jr.'s college plans. We accepted, suspecting this might be their moment to reveal whatever they were planning, but the dinner was canceled last minute when my father claimed to have a scheduling conflict. For the next 3 months, an uneasy silence fell over the college fund topic. My parents became unusually interested in Jamal Jr.'s university acceptance letters and scholarship offers, asking detailed questions about financial aid packages. Meanwhile, I continued to document everything and secure copies of all financial records off-site at my office. Graduation day approached without any direct confrontation, but the strange tension during family gatherings told me the issue wasn't resolved. It was merely waiting to explode. The graduation day setup, May 15th, arrived with perfect spring weather, clear blue skies, and a gentle breeze that seemed crafted specifically for graduation ceremonies. I woke at dawn too excited to sleep and found Tasha already in the kitchen preparing Jamal Jr.'s favorite breakfast, Belgian waffles with fresh berries and whipped cream. The smell of coffee and vanilla filled our home, creating an atmosphere of celebration. Can you believe we made it? Tasha whispered when I wrapped my arms around her waist. 18 years of parenthood had only enhanced her beauty, adding depth to her eyes and confidence to her smile. Our baby is graduating today. Upstairs, I could hear Jamal Jr. moving around, likely trying on his graduation gown for the 10th time. When he appeared in the kitchen doorway, the blue polyester robe hanging on his 6'1" frame, my throat tightened with emotion. No longer the tiny bundle I had once held with trembling hands, but a young man with my chin, Tasha's eyes, and a bright future entirely his own. "How do I look?" he asked, adjusting the cap. "Like the future," I replied, not trusting myself with more words. We arrived at the high school auditorium 90 minutes early to secure good seats. The atmosphere buzzed with the collective excitement of hundreds of families marking this milestone. I kept checking my phone, wondering when my parents would arrive. They had confirmed their attendance 3 times in the past week, with my mother insisting they wouldn't miss it for the world. At 10:30, just as we were beginning to wonder, my parents appeared at the end of our row, followed by Angela, Kevin, and Tyler. My mother wore a dramatic, wide-brimmed hat that would surely block someone's view, and my father had pinned a large corsage to his lapel as though he were the one graduating. Angela looked immaculate as always in a designer dress that probably cost more than her monthly mortgage payment. "We almost couldn't find parking," my mother announced loudly, squeezing past other families to reach us. "Someone should complain to the school about their inadequate facilities." I stood to greet them, noticing how my father was focusing unusually intently on the program rather than making eye contact with me. Tyler, now 15, and going through an awkward phase with acne and a perpetual scowl, trailed behind his parents, looking bored and uncomfortable in dress clothes. "Thank you all for coming," Tasha said warmly, always the gracious one. "It means a lot to Jamal Jr." "Of course," Angela replied with excessive enthusiasm. "Family supports family, always." Something in the way she emphasized family made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The ceremony itself was everything we had anticipated. The processional of students in matching caps and gowns, the principal's speech about futures, bright with promise, the valedictorians' reflections on their shared journey. When they called Jamal Jr.'s name to receive his diploma, I felt Tasha's hand grip mine so tightly it nearly cut off circulation. My son walked across that stage with the confidence of someone who knows they are deeply loved, pausing briefly to find us in the crowd and flashing a smile that transported me back to his first steps. First day of kindergarten. First basketball game. "That's our son," I whispered to Tasha, tears finally breaking free. After the ceremony, we gathered outside under the shade of old oak trees for photos. My mother insisted on dozens of combinations. Jamal Jr., with grandparents, with cousins, with each individual family member. During one particularly extended photo session with Tyler, I noticed my mother whisper something to Angela, both of them exchanging knowing looks that sent warning signals through me. "Everything okay?" Tasha asked clearly, having noticed the same interaction. "Just keeping my eyes open," I replied. We had reservations at Giovanni's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown that had been Jamal Jr.'s choice for his celebration dinner. As we drove there separately, I called Tasha, who was following in her car with Jamal Jr. "Something's definitely up," I said. "They're being too nice, especially to Jamal Jr." I know she agreed. "Just remember our signal if things go sideways." Hand squeeze under the table means, "I've got this, follow my lead." "Let's hope we don't need it," I said. But we both knew better. The celebration dinner ambush, Giovanni's welcomed us, with white tablecloths, soft lighting from crystal chandeliers, and the rich aroma of garlic and fresh herbs. The maitre d' led us to a private alcove with a round table that could comfortably seat 8, a bottle of sparkling cider already chilling in an ice bucket, a thoughtful touch for our underage graduate. Jamal Jr. sat between Tasha and me, his graduation cap placed carefully on the empty chair beside him, tassel occasionally swaying with the movement of passing servers. He was animated, describing campus housing options at Northwestern, his top choice school where he had been offered a partial academic scholarship. "Their engineering program is incredible," he explained, eyes bright with enthusiasm. "And they have this specialized robotics lab that freshmen can actually access if they qualify." My mother smiled with an intensity that did not reach her eyes. "So many wonderful opportunities," she said, voice dripping with a sweetness I recognized from childhood, the tone that always preceded something unpleasant. "You know Tyler has been looking at engineering programs too." "Right, Tyler." Tyler, who had been scrolling through his phone under the table, looked up with confusion. Yeah, I guess. Maybe." The awkward moment passed as our appetizers arrived, calamari bruschetta and a caprese salad that we shared family-style around the table. Through the first and second courses, conversation remained superficially pleasant, though I noticed my father checking his watch repeatedly and my mother exchanging meaningful glances with Angela. After our main courses were cleared and before dessert menus appeared, my father clinked his water glass with his knife, the sharp sound cutting through the ambient restaurant noise. Conversations at nearby tables briefly paused. "I would like to make a toast," he announced, standing with an air of authority he had perfected during 40 years in banking, to Jamal Jr., whose academic achievements have made the entire family proud. We raised our glasses. Jamal Jr. beamed, clearly touched by this rare show of approval from his grandfather. And my father continued, "This seems like the perfect moment to discuss something important regarding Jamal Jr.'s future." My muscles tensed. Beneath the table, Tasha's hand found mine. "Vivian and I have been doing a lot of thinking about how we can best support our grandchildren," my father said, gesturing to include Tyler, who looked up from his phone with sudden interest. "We believe family resources should be directed where they can have the most significant impact." The restaurant sounds seemed to fade away, as my father's voice became the only thing I could hear. "After careful consideration, we have decided to reallocate the college fund that was established for Jamal Jr." Angela nodded encouragingly while Kevin studied his water glass with unusual intensity. "Jamal Jr. has proven himself academically gifted." My mother interjected, her smile tight and rehearsed. "He has scholarship opportunities and two capable parents with successful careers." My father picked up smoothly where she left off. "Tyler, on the other hand, may not have the same academic advantages, but with the right educational support, which unfortunately costs more these days, he could really turn things around." The implications hung in the air for a moment before my father delivered the final blow. "So we're taking over administration of Jamal Jr.'s college fund and redirecting it to establish educational opportunities for Tyler." I felt Jamal Jr. stiffen beside me, his expression shifting from confusion to hurt as he processed what his grandparents were saying. Tasha's grip tightened painfully under the table. "We know this might come as a surprise," my mother added quickly, "but as family elders, we feel it's our responsibility to make these difficult decisions for the greater good." The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but felt eternal. Everyone turned to look at me, expecting anger, shock, or protest. Instead, I felt a strange, calm clarity, like stepping into sunlight after a long time in darkness. I looked directly at my father, then at my mother, before allowing myself a small smile. "That's funny," I said evenly, "because we moved it last month." The immediate aftermath and confrontation, the silence that followed my statement, was deafening. My mother's face froze mid-smile, transforming slowly into something unrecognizable. My father remained standing, his water glass still raised ridiculously in the air as the reality of my words penetrated his consciousness. "What did you just say?" My mother finally managed her voice barely above a whisper. "The college fund," I repeated calmly. "We moved it to a new secure account about 3 months ago. You should have received a transaction notification." My father's complexion shifted from normal to red to an alarming purple. "You had no right," he eventually sputtered, slamming his glass down so hard water splashed onto the white tablecloth. "We are authorized administrators on that account." "Yes, from that one time 8 years ago during the hurricane emergency," I acknowledged. "An oversight I recently corrected." Angela leaned forward, her designer earrings swinging with the sudden movement. "You cannot just move family money around without consultation. That fund was established with contributions from all of us. 94% of that money came directly from Tasha and me," I replied, recalling the exact figures from our documentation. "Your parents contributed 5% over 18 years, and the rest came from interest." Tasha picked up seamlessly. "We have records of every deposit, Angela. Your parents' total contribution amounted to $4,200. Generous gifts we always appreciated, but hardly enough to claim ownership of $85,000. My father's voice rose dangerously. "This is outrageous. We are talking about family resources. Who do you think helped you get started in your business? Who watched your son when you were working late, Jamal Jr.?" who had been silent until now, straightened his shoulders and addressed his grandparents directly. "You were planning to take my college fund, the one my parents have been saving for since I was born." The naked hurt in his voice broke something in me. This was my child facing the same painful family dynamic I had experienced throughout my childhood. "Yes, they were," I confirmed gently. "We discovered their plan months ago, which is why we secured the money." My mother turned her attention to Jamal Jr., adopting the condescending tone she used for small children. "Darling, you need to understand. Tyler has fewer advantages than you. This is about equity. You have scholarships. He needs extra support." Tyler looked mortified, sinking lower in his chair. "I didn't know anything about this," he muttered. "Of course you didn't," Tasha assured him kindly. Angela slammed her hand on the table. "How dare you act like this is some kind of conspiracy? This is about helping Tyler, who struggles academically, unlike your perfect son. Maybe if you spent less on designer clothes and more on tutors, Tyler would have better grades." I retorted immediately, regretting the low blow when I saw Tyler wince. "This is exactly why we needed to intervene," my father declared loudly. "Your selfishness has always been your worst quality, Jamal. Some things never change." Several diners at nearby tables were now openly watching our family drama unfold. A server hovered uncertainly at the edge of our alcove dessert menus, clutched to his chest, clearly debating whether to approach. My mother's voice dropped to a threatening whisper. "We will take legal action. We have rights to that money." "No, you don't," I said firmly. "I've consulted with both our financial advisor and an attorney. The account was established by me for the explicit purpose of Jamal Jr.'s education. Your temporary administrator status was an emergency measure that should have been removed years ago. You've always been jealous of the attention we give Angela and Tyler," my mother accused. "This is just another childish attempt to get back at us." That's when Jamal Jr. stood up his graduation cap, falling unnoticed to the floor. The restaurant grew quieter as my son, still in his graduation robe, looked down at his grandparents with an expression of profound disappointment. "For years I tried to understand why you never seemed interested in my life," he said, his voice steady, despite the emotion clearly bubbling beneath. "Today I finally get it. I was never your grandchild in the ways that matter. I was just a financial resource you thought you could tap whenever it suited you." My mother started to interrupt, but Jamal Jr. raised his hand. "I don't want to hear it. I saw my dad struggle with your conditional love his entire life. I watched him work 60-hour weeks to build that college fund while you contributed occasional small amounts that you never let us forget about." He turned to Tyler. "I'm sorry they put you in this position, man. This isn't your fault." With that, Jamal Jr. walked out of the restaurant, his blue graduation gown billowing slightly as he pushed through the door into the evening air. The explosive revelations. With Jamal Jr. His departure, something seemed to break in the carefully constructed facade my parents had maintained. My mother's composure crumbled first, her voice rising to a pitch I had rarely heard. "This is so typical. Running away from family discussions just like your father always does. He's not running away." I corrected, standing up myself. "He's setting a boundary. Something I should have done 20 years ago." My father jabbed a finger in my direction. "We have put money into that account for years, not just the deposits you know about." The admission hung in the air for a moment before I processed its implications. "What do you mean, not just the deposits I know about?" My mother shot my father a warning look, but it was too late. The damage was done. "We've had access to the account for years," she said finally, her tone suggesting I was being unreasonable for questioning this. "Sometimes Angela needed temporary help with expenses. We simply borrowed from Jamal Jr.'s fund with every intention of replacing it." The restaurant seemed to tilt around me. "You were taking money from my son's college fund to give to Angela." "Without telling me family resources should be fluid," my father insisted. "Angela needed help with Tyler's private school tuition 3 years ago. It was just $12,000. And the down payment on their lake house," my mother added defiantly, "just $18,000. We were going to replace it all." I struggled to maintain my composure. "You stole $30,000 from my son's future." "It was not stealing," Angela interjected. "It was family, helping family. Something you clearly know nothing about." Kevin, who had been silent throughout the entire exchange, finally spoke up. I had no idea the money for the lake house came from Jamal Jr.'s college fund, he said quietly. I was told it was from your retirement savings. Angela shot him a look of betrayal. Whose side are you on? The side of honesty, apparently, he replied, pushing his chair back slightly. Tasha, ever the voice of reason, addressed my parents directly. Did you honestly think we wouldn't notice $30,000 missing from the account? You never checked the detailed statements, my mother replied with a shrug. Just the total balance. The market has been performing well, so the growth masked the withdrawals. The casual way she admitted to this deception struck me like a physical blow. All these years I had maintained a relationship with my parents, for Jamal Jr.'s sake, believing that whatever their flaws, they at least cared about their grandson's future. There's more, I said, pulling out my phone where I had saved copies of the account documentation. When we moved the money, we requested complete transaction records for the past 5 years. There were other withdrawals. 5,000 here, 3,000 there. The total unauthorized withdrawals amount to $42,000. The color drained from my father's face. He clearly hadn't expected me to discover the full extent of their actions. Angela looked panicked. We always planned to pay it back before Jamal Jr. needed it for college. With what money? Tasha asked pointedly. You just refinanced your house last year because you were struggling with debt. That's not the point, my mother insisted. The point is that we already promised Tyler the money for his future. He needs specialized programs and tutoring. We told him last month that his education was taken care of. Tyler looked up, genuine surprise on his face. You said Grandpa's investments were paying for my college, not that you were taking it from Jamal Jr. We weren't taking it, my father corrected stiffly. We were redistributing family resources to the grandchild who needs them most. I shook my head, the full picture finally clear. You never expected Jamal Jr. to go to college, did you? Despite his grades, his ambition, everything he's worked for. My mother's silence was confirmation enough. Tyler was always going to get the money, I continued, the pieces falling into place. That's why you added yourselves to the account all those years ago and never mentioned it again. You were playing the long game. Tyler has learning challenges, Angela said defensively. Jamal Jr. has always had everything come easily to him. Nothing has come easily to him. Tasha corrected firmly. He has worked for every achievement, every scholarship, every opportunity. The difference is that he had parents who supported him, instead of making excuses. I signaled for the check, suddenly desperate to end this dinner and find my son. We're done here. The money is secure. Any further discussion can happen through our attorney. My father's face hardened. This isn't over. That money belongs to this family, and we decide how it's allocated. No, I said, standing to leave. That money belongs to my son. Your grandson. The one who just walked out of here heartbroken because he finally saw who you really are. As I placed cash on the table to cover the bill, my mother made one last attempt. We're still family, Jamal. You can't just walk away. Looking at her, I felt a lifetime of conditional love, manipulation, and disappointment crystallize into perfect clarity. Watch me, I said, and took Tasha's hand as we walked out to find our son. The family fracture. We found Jamal Jr. sitting on a bench in the small park across from the restaurant, still in his graduation gown, staring at the fountain in the center of the square. The evening light caught the occasional tear on his cheek. When he saw us approaching, he quickly wiped his face with his sleeve. I am so sorry, I said, sitting beside him. This should have been your day. It still is my day, he replied, his voice stronger than I expected. I just learned something important about family, that's all. Tasha sat on his other side. Sometimes the hardest lessons come on the most important days. The three of us sat in silence for a moment, watching the fountain water catch the golden light of early evening. For the first time since discovering my parents' plan, I felt a sense of peace. The truth was finally out in the open. Were they really taking money from my fund all this time? Jamal Jr. finally asked. I nodded. About $42,000 over the past 5 years. Money that should have been there for your education. For Tyler, he said thoughtfully. My cousin, who can barely look me in the eye. Tyler didn't know, Tasha reminded him gently. This wasn't his doing. The drive home was quiet, each of us processing the evening's revelations in our own way. As we pulled into our driveway, my phone began buzzing with text messages, and missed calls from my parents and Angela. I silenced it without reading any of them. Inside our home, with graduation decorations still hanging in the living room, Jamal Jr. finally took off his gown and carefully hung it over the back of a chair. The three of us sat at the kitchen island eating leftover birthday cake from the refrigerator, a poor substitute for the tiramisu we had planned to order at Giovanni's, but somehow perfect for the moment. "What happens now?" Jamal Jr. asked, between bites of chocolate frosting. "Now we move forward," I told him. "The money is safe. You can choose Northwestern or any other school that accepted you. Nothing has changed about your future." "Except my relationship with half the family," he pointed out. Tasha reached over to squeeze his hand. "Family isn't just about blood, sweetie. It's about who shows up for you, who supports your dreams, who loves you without conditions." "Your mother is right," I agreed. "And sometimes the healthiest thing we can do is create distance from people who don't have our best interests at heart, even when those people are related to us." Around 9:30 that evening, headlights swept across our living room as a car pulled into our driveway. Through the front window, I saw my parents' sedan, followed by Angela's SUV. They marched up our walkway like an invading army, my father in the lead, with a folder tucked under his arm. "Do not answer," that Tasha warned, as the doorbell rang. When I didn't respond after the third ring, my mother began pounding on the door. "Jamal, we need to talk about this like adults. Open the door." I moved to the door but didn't open it. "It's late. We can talk tomorrow after everyone has cooled down." "There's nothing to cool down from," my father shouted through the door. "We have paperwork here showing our legal right to that money. Open this door now." Neighbors' porch lights began turning on. Across the street, Mr. Peterson stepped onto his front step, watching the commotion with concern. "If you don't leave now, I'll call the police," I said firmly. "This is not the time or place." "Call them," Angela challenged. "Let's see what they have to say about your theft." I stepped away from the door and picked up my phone. When they saw me through the window actually dialing, their expressions changed from defiance to disbelief. None of them had expected me to actually follow through. Within 15 minutes, a police cruiser pulled up in front of our house. Two officers spoke with my parents and Angela on the sidewalk while I explained the situation from our front porch. After examining the financial documents I had prepared, the senior officer informed my parents that this was a civil matter, not criminal, and that they needed to leave our property immediately. "This isn't over," my father warned, as they reluctantly returned to their cars. "You'll be hearing from our lawyer." After they drove away, our neighborhood returned to its quiet normalcy. The only evidence of the confrontation was the curious glances from neighbors and the emotional exhaustion we all felt. That night, long after Jamal Jr. had gone to bed, Tasha and I sat on our back patio, a single lamp illuminating our quiet conversation. "I should have cut ties with them years ago," I admitted. "I kept thinking they would change, that they would eventually treat Jamal Jr. better than they treated me." Tasha leaned her head on my shoulder. "You wanted to believe in family. There's nothing wrong with that." "No," I said. "I wanted to believe in a fantasy. The reality was always right in front of me." The next morning, I called our family attorney and scheduled an appointment. By the end of the week, we had sent a formal cease and desist letter to my parents documenting the unauthorized withdrawals and making it clear that any legal action on their part would result in countercharges of financial misconduct. Our financial advisor confirmed that the secured funds were untouchable by my parents, protected by the new account structure and the documented evidence of the original account's intended purpose. Despite my parents' threats, no legal action materialized, likely because any courtroom examination would reveal their unauthorized withdrawals. Instead, Angela began a campaign of family gossip, telling extended relatives that we had stolen family money and turned our backs on Tyler's future. Some believed her. Others, who had experienced similar treatment from my parents over the years, reached out privately to offer support. Through it all, Jamal Jr. showed remarkable resilience. He deactivated his social media accounts to avoid the drama blocking his grandparents and Angela's family, but maintained contact with Tyler through occasional text messages, a generosity of spirit that made me incredibly proud. "Tyler asked if I hate him," Jamal Jr. told me one evening. I told him I don't. He's as much a victim in this as anyone. 6 months later, the leaves on our maple tree had turned brilliant crimson and gold when I dropped Jamal Jr. off for his first semester at Northwestern. The campus buzzed with the energy of new beginnings as freshmen navigated dorm assignments and parents struggled with goodbye embraces. Standing in his half-decorated dorm room, I found myself fighting back tears. "You have everything you need?" I asked, needlessly adjusting the desk lamp we had just set up. "Dad, I'm fine," he assured me with the patient tone of someone speaking to a child. Tasha already triple-checked everything. My wife was downstairs in the car giving us a moment alone, her emotional goodbye already completed with promises of care packages and weekly video calls. "I'm proud of you," I told him, "not just for getting here, but for how you handled everything this summer." He nodded, understanding flowing between us. The months following graduation had been challenging. My parents had made 2 more attempts to contact us, once through a family friend and once by showing up unannounced at my office. Each time I had maintained the boundaries we had established. "I learned from the best," Jamal Jr. said. "You could have let their behavior define you, but you chose to be different." I pulled him into a final embrace, marveling at how my son had somehow become so wise. "Call us tonight, after orientation." "Promise," he said, already turning his attention to arranging books on his shelf, ready for his new chapter to begin. On the drive back home, Tasha and I talked about how different the college drop-off might have been if we hadn't discovered my parents' plan. The financial strain we would have faced, the additional loans Jamal Jr. would have needed. "Sometimes the painful breaks are necessary," Tasha observed, as we passed through Wisconsin farmland. "Your parents showed us who they really were, and in doing so, they freed us." She was right. The fracture in our family had been painful but clarifying. Without the constant tension of managing my parents' manipulative behavior, our home felt lighter. The energy once spent navigating toxic family dynamics was now directed toward healthier relationships and pursuits. 3 weeks into the semester, Jamal Jr. called with surprising news. The Alumni Association contacted me about a special scholarship. Apparently, they review unusual cases where students have overcome significant obstacles. "That's wonderful," I said. "Did you apply for it?" "That's the thing. I didn't. Someone nominated me." The committee mentioned family financial complications specifically. Later that evening, I received an email from Kevin Angela's husband. "I heard about the scholarship," he wrote. "Glad something good could come from all this. Tyler asked me to tell you he's starting therapy and working with a new tutor. He's doing better." It was the closest thing to an olive branch from that side of the family, and I appreciated it for what it was: acknowledgement without expectation. As autumn deepened into winter, the silence from my parents turned from weeks to months. Then, just before Thanksgiving, an envelope arrived with my mother's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a 5-page handwritten letter expressing regret about how things had gotten out of hand and suggesting a family reconciliation for everyone's benefit. Noticeably absent was any acknowledgement of the unauthorized withdrawals or the attempt to take Jamal Jr.'s entire college fund. Instead, the letter positioned them as victims of misunderstanding who were generously offering forgiveness for my overreaction. Tasha read the letter twice before handing it back to me. "Some people never change," she observed. "They're still trying to control the narrative." We decided to wait until Jamal Jr.'s Thanksgiving break to discuss it as a family. When he read the letter, he was thoughtfully silent for several minutes. "They don't really want reconciliation," he finally said. "They want to pretend nothing happened so they can save face with the rest of the family." "What do you want to do?" I asked him, determined that this decision would be his to make. He considered the question carefully. "I think we acknowledge receipt of the letter but maintain our boundaries. Maybe someday they'll truly understand what they did wrong, but this letter shows they're not there yet." I drafted a brief, polite response that essentially said exactly that, proud of the mature, measured approach my son had suggested. We mailed it the next day and continued with our smaller but infinitely more genuine Thanksgiving celebration. The healing journey and wisdom gained. 1 year after the graduation dinner confrontation, our family gathered in the backyard for a barbecue celebrating Jamal Jr.'s successful completion of his freshman year. He had thrived at Northwestern, making the dean's list both semesters and securing a summer internship with an engineering firm in Chicago. Friends and neighbors filled our patio, the atmosphere light with laughter and conversation. Watching my son move confidently among our guests, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The painful severing of toxic family ties had initially felt like a loss, but gradually revealed itself as a liberation. Without the constant undercurrent of manipulation and conditional acceptance, we had all flourished. Tasha joined me by the grill, slipping her arm around my waist. Penny, for your thoughts. Just reflecting on how removing something negative can be the most positive action, I replied, flipping burgers with practiced ease. I spent decades trying to earn my parents' approval, and all it took was one authentic act of standing up for our son to realize I never needed it in the first place. Later that evening, after our guests had departed and we were cleaning up the yard, Jamal Jr. helped me fold the portable tables. I got a text from Tyler yesterday, he mentioned casually. He's bringing his grades up, thinking about community college next year. That's great, I said, genuinely pleased for my nephew. How is he doing otherwise? Better since his parents' divorce. Uncle Kevin has full custody now. The news wasn't entirely surprising. Kevin had maintained occasional contact with us, hinting at growing tensions with Angela over her financial decisions and continued alignment with my parents. Tyler asked if he could visit sometime, Jamal Jr. continued. I told him he's welcome, but that I'm not ready to include Grandma, Grandpa, or his mom. I nodded, appreciating my son's capacity to maintain boundaries while still leaving room for healing where possible. That sounds like a healthy approach. As we carried the folded tables to the garage, Jamal Jr. paused. Dad, do you regret cutting them off? Your own parents? The question deserved careful consideration. I regret that they couldn't be the parents and grandparents we needed them to be, I answered honestly. But I don't regret protecting you, our family, and the future we worked so hard to secure for you. I've been thinking about it a lot this year, he said. About cycles of family behavior and how they continue until someone has the courage to break them. He was right, of course. By protecting his college fund, I had done more than secure his education. I had demonstrated that exploitation isn't something you accept from anyone, even family. That boundaries aren't selfish, but necessary. That love should empower, not diminish. The most profound lesson from this painful chapter wasn't about money at all. It was about recognizing that true family is defined by consistent support, genuine care, and mutual respect, qualities that transcend biological connections. My parents had provided the counterexample that made our own family's bonds even stronger by contrast. You know, I told my son as we walked back to the house under a sky painted with sunset colors, some people spend their entire lives trying to earn love from those incapable of giving it freely. The real freedom comes from recognizing who deserves your energy and who doesn't. Jamal Jr. nodded thoughtfully. I think I needed to see it clearly for myself. If you had tried to tell me who they really were before this happened, I might not have believed it. Sometimes people have to reveal themselves, Tasha added, joining our conversation as we entered the kitchen. And when they do, we should believe them the first time. That night, sitting on our back patio, long after Jamal Jr., I had gone to bed. Tasha and I watched fireflies dance across our yard, their intermittent glow, a reminder of life's fleeting moments. We did good, she said simply, her hand finding mine in the darkness. We did, I agreed. Not perfect, but good. The path forward wasn't without its complications. We still occasionally received messages from my parents or Angela, each attempting to rewrite history or reestablish contact on their terms. But with each passing month, their power to affect us diminished. We had found our equilibrium without them, not out of spite or bitterness, but as an act of self-preservation and authentic living. The college fund that had become the focal point of so much family drama was serving its intended purpose. Each semester, as we transferred tuition payments, I felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that 18 years of sacrifice and 3 months of decisive action had protected my son's future. The money represented not just dollars and cents, but a tangible expression of parental love, consistent, unconditional, and delivered as promised. If you have ever had to make the difficult decision to create boundaries with family members, I would love to hear your story in the comments. How did you find the strength to stand firm when it mattered most? Like this video if you believe protecting your children sometimes means making tough choices about toxic family relationships. Subscribe for more real-life stories about navigating complicated family dynamics with integrity. And remember, sometimes the family we choose proves more valuable than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to protect what matters most in your own life.